Welcome everybody to the May 23rd City of Franklin Municipal Planning Commission meeting. Appreciate everybody being here. We will start our agenda tonight with minutes of the meeting from our April meeting. Do I have a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Move to second. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is an opportunity if there's items that you want to discuss to the commission that are not on tonight's agenda. This is your opportunity to come forward and speak to these fine young men and women up here on the commission. Seeing none, then we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is announcements. Catherine?
I have no announcements this evening.
That was a quick agenda item, thank you. Then we will ask if there's anyone in the audience who wants to bring a non-agenda item before the board for consideration. All right, I see none for that. Then we'll move on to our agendas. Before we get started with consent agenda, Roger Lindsay, our vice chair, is not here tonight, so we need to elect a new vice chair for the evening. So I will entertain a motion.
Okay, I'd like to nominate Alderman Ann Peterson for vice chair for tonight.
All right.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any other nominations? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, let's start with the initial consent agenda. These are items that are considered non-controversial for tonight's meeting, and we'll consider those all in one block. These items are items 7 through 14, 21 through 24, and 27. Is there anyone in the audience, staff, or commission that would like to pull an item from this agenda? All right, I see none, then I'll entertain a motion.
Move for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, the secondary agenda, I'm going to pass it to Ms. Peterson because I've got a couple items on here that I need to recuse myself from, so.
The items on the secondary consent are number 15, 16, 25, and 26. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Passes.
Thank you, Ann. All right, the first agenda item for tonight will be ordinance 2013-21, an ordinance to rezone approximately 36 acres from local mixed-use district to civic and institutional district for the property located at 1228 Liberty Pike.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request relates to the rezoning of the property, as you mentioned, at 1228 Liberty Pike by the City of Franklin, and will contain the future Columbia State Community College. Over the past year, the city has worked with representatives from the college to prepare for eventual construction on the site. Since the site will contain an institutional use, the city is rezoning the property to the CI district to be consistent with similar uses in the city. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the item. Additionally, in your packets, there's more detailed information relating to the placement of the facility on the lot. As you'll notice, the site is within the HHO district, which is the Hillside Hillcrest Overlay District. However, the state of Tennessee owns the site, which does not subject the property to the city's zoning regulations. Again, as noted, staff has worked with the design team to mitigate the impacts of eventual site construction within areas of the HHO. Dr. Janet Smith, President of Columbia State Community College, is in attendance this evening and would like to present more specific information regarding the future vision and plans for the site. So if the commission allows, she would like to present some
Sure,
slides.
please. Is this where we would applaud?
Thank you for the opportunity of being here and sharing with you our latest design. Many of you may have seen the visionary of the campus back when we were looking at purchasing the campus or the land. And we have done much work since then. And so I have 4 slides to show with you. The first one, someone's already hit it, thank you. The first one is the campus layout long range. as we dealt with a piece of property, we wanted to think about the future and not just what we were building in the, hopefully next year. And if you look at it, there's two colors. There's the red and then the blue. The red is the campus that we're looking at constructing. The blue is the campus that we're looking at constructing in the future. And you can see that it empties onto Liberty Pike as well as to Knolltop Lane once that road is finished as well. This is a look at the first level of construction with the three buildings. We at once thought we would try and work the whole piece of property and prepare it, but given our budgetary constraints, we will be preparing just for the initial construction. And this is the design of the buildings. There will be three buildings to start. There is a tower, but that's not in the first phase of construction, just the buildings. There is an arts and science building, a math and health building, and then an administration building. To walk you through what is in each one, I've labeled them the Arts and Science Building. The Arts and Science Building would back up toward Knolltop Road. As you're on the Knolltop, it would appear to be 3 stories. There's a large basement area that opens out, would house our film crew technology, as well as some of the information technology area. The first floor of that building, everything on the inside of the campus in the mall area would appear to be 2-story except for the Student Administration Services Building, which would be 3-story. The bottom floor of the Arts and Science is our commercial entertainment program as well as classrooms for distance learning, and the top floor is faculty offices and classrooms. In the Science and Technology and Health Building, the bottom floor is science classrooms. There are 2 biology classrooms, a chemistry classroom and a physics classroom. We currently only have 1 biology classroom, so this is a great increase in the amount of sciences that we can offer at our campus. Then we have room there for expansion of another science lab as we need it, as well as a computer lab on the bottom floor. The top floor is our health sciences area. That is primarily nursing as well as information technology. So those are the 2 that occupy that. The Student Services and Administration Building, as you enter that building from the mall area, you enter into the student area where we have admissions as well as bookstore and a small cafe. You would go up the steps to the 2nd floor, and if you're entering the campus as a new student to seek information, you would drive in and enter on the 2nd floor and then walk down to the 1st floor for admissions. But if you're entering on the 2nd floor, you're entering into what would be our workforce and our community area. We're planning 1 large community room for various community gatherings as well as workforce training, and then there's a workforce computer lab that will be there, and offices, and then the administrative offices. On the top floor of that particular building is our library, as well as tutoring, testing, and the learning services for our students who are needing extra help in mathematics and reading and the like. So this is the first phase of the campus. We were hopeful to receive funding this year, but the funding did not come through, but all evidence shows that it will be here next year, and we can begin construction at that time. We are in the process of continuing our design and our plans so that once the funds are available, we can move forward and complete the campus and provide services. This will move us from 1,500 students to being able to serve somewhere in the neighborhood of 2,200 students. We estimate when the campus is fully built out, it can go up to 6,000 students using all of the day and evening and weekends and the like. If there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. I do appreciate the time to share with you what the future looks like, and it's a very, very bright future, and we are very indebted to the citizens of Franklin and Williamson County, because without the partnership, this would not be occurring. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. All right, is there anyone in the audience that would like to speak to this item before we make a motion? Vernon?
Thank you, Dr. Smith, and good evening, Planning Commissioners. I thought I would just spend a couple minutes to talk about the approval process, since this is a state-owned facility. And the state-owned facilities such as this are not subject to local zoning regulations. However, as you've known, dating back for more than a year, and as Jonathan Langley and Dr. Smith have mentioned, we've been engaged along the way. And going forward, they will continue to work with us through our administrative approval process. And they'll even obtain the necessary construction permits and utilize our local services, our team services, to inspect the property along the way. Their design team, consisting of Bauer Askew Architects and Little John Engineering, as you see all the way to date, we've been involved and doing our best to comply with our current development standards, but did want to let you know that from this point forward, they'll be moving through an administrative approval process. It's an exciting project for our community. I'm sure you agree. Thank you.
Super. Thank you, Vernon. All right, is there a motion?
Move for approval. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Ms.
Well, first
McPherson?
of all, I guess I should say, I'm a former employee of Columbia State for a long time, but no longer employed there.
Okay, all
So
right,
just kind of giving the disclaimer.
all right, thank you. All right, any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. All right, item number 18, ordinance 2013-17, ordinance to rezone approximately 1.45 acres from office residential to residential variety for the property located at 1319 West Main.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This request is to rezone the property from OR, which is office residential, to RX, which is residential variety, to permit attached dwellings. The land use plan recognizes that the West Main area contains a mix of uses and supports attached residential units on the site. Therefore, staff recommends approval of this item.
All right, thank you. Anyone in the audience other than the applicant want to speak to this item? All right, I see none. Is there someone representing the applicant?
Yes, Daniel Woods with the Addison Group, here representing the applicant. We're in favor of all of the comments from planning and all the conditions. I have no objections, and we're just thankful to be at this point, so happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. All right, Commissioners, is there a motion?
Motion approved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I'm going to have some discussion. This is, of course, on the rezoning ordinance, but I think it all goes to the same kind of thing, because the development plan that goes along with this has some things that are of concern. First of all, the piece of property has a lot of constraints on it. It has this wet weather conveyance, and it also has, from what I can tell, a part of the Sharps Branch, which has been of concern. I know just at the last capital improvements, there was a discussion about working with the people on Battle Avenue for drainage, stormwater problems. I don't want to go into all of that. The main thing that was on the Battle Avenue plan really discussed what was called the Basin Number 2. But for those of us who saw that, Basin Number 1 problems that they did not have any proposals to improve almost back up to this piece of property. The 4 or 5 affected properties are on Battle Avenue, just right behind this, and really even though this, whenever I looked back at the stormwater report on it, it does not look at anything outside of it, but from hearing the other discussions and the people who came to that meeting, there is a concern about stormwater here and about the drainage. And so that goes back to my point here, which is that this lot has a lot of physical constraints. You know, if you look at the development plan, I don't know whether they can use half of it or not, but that's about it. It also has the problem that in the works for capital improvements, there's also a project to widen West Main Street. And I don't remember whether this was whenever this came up last time, but there was a sheet that we had saying if and when the West Main widening project occurs, this is going to be like 6.5 feet off the sidewalk. So as I say, it's a great constraint
Right.
there, just the size of the piece of property. And it's also, it has a great deal of density there. I think it's 23 or 24 units to the acre if you were using the whole piece of property. And that would be very different from anything, as far as I know, even in Central Franklin overall.
And I appreciate your point. However, anytime we do rezoning, we need to consider not a specific development plan, but what could happen. Because, you know, it could always, we rezone it and that particular landowner could go away and that rezoning would stick with that property, so
Exactly.
we've got to consider all that as well. All right, any other comments?
Well, I guess I would ask Representative here, because the things that Ann said were some of the things that gone through my mind, and I wasn't even, thinking about the West Main Street, proposed widening of all that. But I guess my question is, would you still, with all the constraints that are on this property, how would you make this project work? I've just had questions about that. Have you considered, because I didn't see no comments or anything about that, so could you kind of answer what Ms. Little just talked about?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
I mean, Peterson, I'm sorry.
And just to kind of back, this is the first time we're bringing this in front of you guys. We actually started this process last summer. So it's been a long road, but we started this at 48 units. And even had parts of the property were going to impact the Zone 2 buffer of the stream. And so we made considerable compromises to get back to what we felt was a good compromise with the city and a better environmental project as well. So we're proposing no longer any impacts to the Zone 1 or Zone 2 buffer. We're showing no impacts to the stream, obviously, which is called Sharps Branch. We are our post stormwater versus our pre, we are improving that, so there will be less impact stormwater runoff wise for this site after this process is done. So we've shown that in our stormwater management plan. There is a small wet weather conveyance on the site. It has been approved by TDEC and seconded by the City of Franklin that can be filled in, so we have documentation of that as well. But I think bigger picture, we went from 48 units to 35 to make a project that fits appropriate. And so we're very happy to have gotten to this point to where, to be very excited to see that planning has recommended approval. And actually have worked with Carl as well in traffic to understand how West Main Street would affect this. And it takes a portion of right-of-way. I think the best way to describe it is when it's said and done, it will widen, it will take a section of right-of-way on either side, 15 feet, but the streetscape will take on more of a look of Columbia Avenue, and I think that's more indicative of what you will see streetscape-wise for the future of West Main Street. So it's not open ditch on either side, instead it's bike lanes and sidewalks. So we've accommodated in that setback for that widening, and that was one of the comments from staff as well as from Alderman Michael Skinner to make sure that we are accommodating for that in future, and we have done that.
And one other question, again, this is for staff, because I live on out West Main Street. What impact, how is this going to impact the traffic on West Main as opposed to having the current office residential? We're talking about 35 units here, to Cardinal. So did we look at that? Because just thinking about it right now, I mean, that's going to be a little tough.
On item 19, the development plan, they did provide trip generation data, so there's a chart there showing
You
what
comfortable?
the
So, but
impacts will be.
as a staff, you're comfortable with that? You're comfortable with? Okay.
I would defer to engineering, but as far as I know, yes.
Okay.
All right, any other comments? Remember, this is just the
Oh, I
rezoning. We'll
know.
deal with the development plan here on the next item. All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Okay, 3 no. Ms. Peterson, Ms. Gregory, and Ms. Allen. Motion passes. All right, we'll move to item number 19, Resolution am I right? Yeah, Resolution 2013-24, resolution approving a development plan for the Village at West Main PUD subdivision located at 1319 West Main Street by the City of Franklin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On this project, the applicant is requesting 3 modifications of standards. The first modification request relates to the front setback of the proposed structure. Due to design incompatibility, this project is subject to the transitional standards that are laid out in the zoning ordinance. Among other things, that section requires the use of setbacks that are within 25% of the average setbacks for existing uses on the same block face, provided that no new use is closer to the right-of-way than any existing use. Applying this particular requirement to this project would situate the building at least 200 feet from the front property line, making it difficult, if not impossible, for the applicant to follow our parking requirements and stream buffer requirements. The applicant would prefer to place the building 15 to 20 feet off the property line. Staff recommends approval of that modification of standards request. The second request relates to building height. Within the Central Franklin Character Area Overlay Special Area Number 8, new structures may not exceed 2 stories in height. The applicant wishes to construct a 3-story building. Because of the mix of building types, heights, and setbacks in this area, it is difficult to find any consistency in mass and scale. Staff agrees that if the building is to be 3 stories, then a step-back approach would be appropriate here. Staff recommends approval of this modification of standards request. The third modification request relates to parking. Per the city's current standards, this project would be required to include 70 parking spaces. The applicant is proposing 53 spaces, which is a ratio of just over 1.5 spaces per unit, with all of the units being 1-bedroom units. This ratio is consistent with the findings and recommendations of a recent parking study undertaken by the Planning Department that will be discussed later tonight. So staff recommends approval of that modification of standards request as well. Beyond the modification request, staff recommends that you pass this item along to BOMA with a favorable recommendation along with the conditions that are set forth on the staff report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience, other than the applicant, that want to speak to this item? If you'll come forward and just give us your name and where you live, please.
Good evening, council and staff members. My name's Rob Bramblett. If you notice, my house is 1318 Bostic Street, which nobody's mentioned tonight, but we're directly adjacent in the back. And so I've got a couple of things I want to bring to the council member, 3 different ways that my property and myself are going to be affected by this change. Excuse me. Number 1, as a property owner directly adjacent to the proposed development, I will be affected. Number 2, as a homeowner near the development, worried about the microeconomics of the housing and the housing prices and how this particular development is going to affect that. And number 3, as a taxpayer, I would like to speak a little more directly to each one of those. As a property owner directly adjacent to the proposed development, the topography of the land is in such a way that all the houses on Bostic Street and Everbright are about 17 feet higher than the base of the proposed development. The trees between, in that buffer zone, I guess we called it zone 1 and 2, are between 48 and 60 feet tall, depending on where you are in that, in that buffer zone. And I'm a certified arborist, so I happen to know the height of those. And unfortunately, they will not hide the structures even during the summer. The trees are just not tall enough to hide a three-story structure. So everybody on Bostic Street and Everbright is going to be able to see directly onto the roofs of these three-story buildings. So I would just bring that to your attention. Also, during the fall and winter, all of that foliage back behind there is deciduous, so it will not be present. So we will be able to see directly through there. I know that because we can see through there right now. I did talk with the developer, mentioned that there would possibly be some evergreens planted back there, and while that would be great in 10, 15 years, it's not going to hide it right now, unfortunately. The second point, as a homeowner, worried about the housing market and the socioeconomics of what's going on there. There's plenty of studies that we can, look at. It talks about multi-family residence and what that does to a particular area. I would bring that to your attention. The point of the development is to provide more economical housing for a certain demographic. I've talked with the developer about that a little bit, and the city would like to provide more affordable housing, and that directly affects all of the surrounding community. Whether it's Battle Avenue, whether it's Main Street, some of the council members live on Main Street, whether it's Bostic and Everbright, it is going to affect the housing prices directly. And I know that because we have another housing development right adjacent as well. And it does affect it during the fall and winter. You can see right into there. And we love our neighbors over there, but we don't really want another housing development directly behind us. And then third, as a taxpayer, I'm curious and respectfully, I'm just wanting to know what right the city has to provide at taxpayer expense, maybe only initially, but at taxpayer expense, subsidized housing for anybody. And quite frankly, it's curious to me. Maybe there is a reason. Maybe it's in the bylaws that we're allowed to do that, but I don't see, as a taxpayer, why that should be the case. If we want to provide subsidized housing, well, let's just take our tax bill down a little bit. I would love, for it to be subsidized for me. And I say that respectfully. I'm not trying to be flippant about it, but those were some of the concerns I had.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. All right, anyone else?
Hey there, I'm Justin Esri. I live at 214 Battle Avenue. I own a property at 205 Everbright as well, and my grandmother-in-law, she's at 410 Battle Avenue, Miss Inga Smith. Her property actually butts up to this development, and I may be coming in on this a little late, but I just particularly want to know what's going in my backyard. She owns a preschool. We kind of want to know. I actually walked out there today. I've called Mr. Woods a couple of times today. I'm sure you've been busy. Called a few other people. Haven't got much information on this, but basically I just want to know what's going in my backyard. We have 40, 50 kids at the preschool. Like I said, it's butts up. We just want to know what these kids are going to be looking at, if it's subsidized housing. If I could just get some information on that, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, anyone else?
Hello, I'm Steve Murray. I'm Executive Director of Community Housing Partnership of Williamson County, and we are the proposed owners of this project. And I thank you for your time and attention this evening. We're planning to do 35 one-bedroom affordable rental units at an estimated rent of $625 a month. This was the first major development project on West Main Street that's going to provide traditional design standards that have been wished for by the City of Franklin. And the project's consistent with the development plans of Franklin Housing Authority and their redevelopment activities across the downtown neighborhood that many of you all have heard of. The project's received endorsement by County Mayor Rogers Anderson, verbally from him, Franklin Housing Authority, the Franklin Housing Commission, and many other individual citizens. We've had public meetings on the project, and we have seen public support from many of the business owners on West Main Street for these units. It should be clear, especially with the comments that you just heard, that this is rental housing for our working families. This includes our firemen, our police officers, our school teachers, our City of Franklin employees, and our Williamson County staff. It's being developed for working individuals and families making approximately $35,000 a year and up, and it is not subsidized housing. There is no subsidy. It is a market-driven project. It's with great pride I stand in front of you tonight and tell you that the Franklin Housing Commission in their May 2nd meeting unanimously endorsed the Village at West Main Street, provided it maintains affordable and workforce housing standards. Community Housing Partnership and Franklin Housing Authority, who've been involved in it, have made every effort to address the concerns of the city of Franklin over the past year and the surrounding neighborhoods adjacent to the Village at West Main Street. We believe tonight you have the opportunity to make an important difference for the future of rental housing for our working families in the downtown area, and we hope that you will do so. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else? All right, I will entertain a motion.
Motion approved. Second.
Moved and seconded for approval. Any comments?
I still have comments. You know, I've been one of the ones that used to bang the table about the whole affordable housing and affordable rental units specifically. And as I said here, you know, there's a part of me that goes, rah, 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 because we do need this, and I acknowledge that. But part of my concern isn't about it being a housing project or it being a subsidized housing or anything like that, because Lord knows we do need affordable renting, but it's about the site itself, not the project. It's the site itself. So therefore, I voted against the rezoning for the very same reason. I don't care what you were putting in here, along this with this amount of what I feel like this amount of density, this amount of everything with this site. So my vote tonight against that doesn't say Marcia Allen doesn't want affordable. I'm always for that, but I still feel that I have to be responsible in giving my vote, and so I just want to make that clear, because I don't want to be said that I'm a hypocrite, because I'm not. I do have a reason for that, so I just want to make that very clear. Thanks.
All right, any other general comments? And I'm going to go through each of these modifications one by one, but then,
Well, I want to talk about one of the modifications, or
Okay.
maybe two of them. But again, I think the difficulty is just that this site really is not, it doesn't fit. I mean, you know, if you look at it, so little of it can even be developed on. And that makes it very, very, very difficult. And as I say, I hope that you will also show what this would look like with the project, with the widening project on there. As I say, it's even with the modification here, this thing would be 6.5 feet from the sidewalk.
sure. Well, why don't we, maybe we'll start with the modification number 1, since that addresses the setbacks, and maybe we can discuss a little bit about what the right-of-way widening will do. Can I get a motion for the first modification of standards, which is the building setback?
I move that we disapprove.
Move that you disapprove?
Disapprove, yes.
Disapprove, okay.
Second.
Moved and seconded for disapproval of the modification standard number 1. All right, any discussion? Do we want to, I mean, I guess this is the image that you were talking about, Ms. Peterson?
It is, but I want to go back. The zoning ordinance says that use setbacks that are within 25% of the average setbacks. I don't know that anybody's ever told me what the average setback was.
I calculated that up yesterday, and I believe it was around 70 to 80 feet, and that's due to the ProHealth facility to the south, and then due to the Williamson County Complex across the street, which the Williamson County Complex has over 200 feet, and I think the ProHealth facility is about 90 feet, so those are definitely expanding that number.
Can I add something to that as well?
Sure.
Something that should be noted is that this is in a traditional area, and this district has been adopted by both planning and Board of Mayor and Aldermen, that they be more traditional, that the buildings be closer to the street, and that no parking be allowed in front of the buildings. So it gets back to more of a Columbia Avenue look. So that's why the stark change, and as Steve mentioned, this is the very first redevelopment project on West Main Street in quite some time. So that's why there is a difference in what you see in ProHealth. And I think that it's been mentioned quite a bit that ProHealth's building, as it stands today, is not the desired setback going forward. Scale-wise, another thing to mention, I'd like to just point out is, it is zoned commercial, which allows for office and retail. The size and the scale of building that we're proposing is relatively equal to a 12 to 15,000 square foot office building, which would be permitted by right and would park at about the same ratio.
All right, thank you. Excuse me, can someone kind of go through, staff, go through the widening and how that affects this property? I don't know who's the right person to do that, just to,
I'll give it a go. Why
go
not?
ahead, Dan.
We went back and we looked at the, as this project came through, we looked at the major thoroughfare plan and looked at what would be planned in here. Based on those typical sections that we have, we figured out that on this side of the road, we needed to make a reservation of about 15 extra feet. And we kind of have a exhibit that we've got prepared up here. I'm not sure if everybody can see it real well or not, but so the red lines show basically what that future right-of-way would be for the fully built-out widened project on West Main, getting that additional 15 feet of right-of-way. There's a smaller dimension just above that shows proposed at 18 feet. So it's shown the building would be 18 feet from the existing property line up to the face of the building. We went ahead and drew in the you see it kind of looks like a little ladder there. That's supposed to represent the sidewalk in red.
Gotcha.
And so from the back of that sidewalk to the face of the building, you're looking at having about 6.5 feet. And what we looked at along here, there's some other dimensions kind of shown along there. So we've extended those right-of-way lines all along through there just for comparison purposes. If you take out some of the other, a couple of properties that Donald mentioned earlier that really kind of skew that average and look more at kind of things that are more in character with the area there, you'll see that we're very close there. We've got some links from the building setback now to existing right-of-way up there at the top. I have a little trouble reading. I believe it's about 19 feet. I believe the next one down is about 30 feet. Across the street, kind of in the bottom corner of the page there, I think again is also just a hair over 19 feet. And they're looking at being about 18 feet from existing right-of-way to building setback. So they've made an attempt to be very close in character.
Wait, I've got one that says 32 feet for one and 30 feet for another one. That came from somebody here.
That was from me, and I drew that up on the fly for you yesterday. So
Okay.
I used ArcGIS to sort of make those calculations, and they're based simply on aerial photography, and so they may be
gotcha.
just a tad off.
All right, thank you, Dan. All right, so we have a motion for
But-
disapproval of this
okay.
modification.
All right,
Any other
let-
comments? Go ahead, Ms.
Yes,
Pearson.
uh-huh.
Okay.
Whenever you're talking about that are within 25% of average setbacks, again, even if you exclude the others, from what I'm seeing, they're around 25 or 30 feet for the others. And basically, it also says no new use would be closer than, existing uses and everything. And I don't mean any existing use, but the closest existing use. And it really is very, very, very close. And honestly, there was a comment in here to us that the applicant, you could use 0 feet. I do not think anywhere except downtown, they're going to be 0 setbacks, I don't think. I mean, I'm sure there are not any 0 setbacks in West Haven, are there? No. It's, even though it's traditional, I think it fits more the, up to 25 feet or something like that. But even if you took 25 feet and you took 15 off for the road, you'd at least have 10 feet. But again, the other one that's going to be talked about too is it's going to be much taller than anything around there too. And as I say, it's the combination besides that. And it all goes back to this piece of property just really does not have very much usable land on it. That is the difficulty. That's the real difficulty. It just doesn't have much usable land out of that 1.45 acres.
All right, any other comments? All right, seeing none, then again, a vote of yes would be for disapproval of this motion. So all in favor of disapproval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Would the noes please raise their hand? All right, motion fails. Did you get that? I'm sorry. Okay. Voting yes. Voting yes would be Ms. Gregory, Ms. Peterson, and Ms. Allen. Okay, so we're back to the main motion.
Oh, no, modification standards too.
That's modification.
Well,
Oh, no, you got to have
We
that.
still, we need to
from-
have some kind of a vote on the modification,
That's
so.
right, that's right. Not the
I
main
assume
motion.
so, right?
For the first one, yes.
For
So-
approval for modification, modification one, excuse me.
All right,
Second.
moved and seconded for approval. Any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Okay, the noes, Ms. Allen, Ms. Peterson, and Ms. Gregory. Motion passes. Modification number 2, which would be the building height. Is there a motion?
Again, I would
This would be the
move
second
to,
amendment to the main motion.
I would move to disapprove this too. It basically says on our land use plan that the recommendation is 1 or 2 story buildings.
I'll second.
Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, seeing
And-
none, all in favor of the disapproval of the modification standard number 2, say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
All right, Ms. Allen, Ms. Peterson, and Ms. Gregory voting no. Motion passes.
Wait,
I'm
We
sorry,
voted
motion
yes.
fails, excuse me, pardon me. So we're back to the main motion, back to the modification number 2. I'll entertain a motion,
Move for approval for modification two.
okay? Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
again, I was going to say
Sorry,
that
Ms. Peterson?
the massing of this is just, you know, it does, if you're talking about having standards that are in our land use plan, this doesn't fit.
Can I make a quick comment?
Sure.
We're proposing to step back the third floor with a series of porches, which has been mentioned in the planning's recommendation for approval. It does say in the PUD process that it does allow 3 stories, actually 4 with a transitional element, which obviously will be up for review for you guys. But it does clearly say that 3 stories in a PUD process is allowed, although the land use plan says 2.
Well,
right, thank
it's
you, Dan.
it's with a modification of standards, though.
All right,
Through the PUD process.
we're voting
That's
for
right.
the amendment to the main motion, modification number 2. Current motion is for approval. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
You got that one? Okay. All right, motion passes. Last modification of standard requested is parking. Is there another amendment to the main motion?
Motion to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded for approval. Any discussion?
And this does fit in with the tracking of the parking that we're looking at
That's
now.
correct. All right, any other discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right, we're back to the main motion. Any other discussion on the main motion?
Well, again, there's the problem with the water out here. And did I understand, and I did try to read the stormwater comments on this, but it says that you're going to be able to fill in?
No, we would not fill.
I thought it said can be filled in as well.
Only on the site, on the areas of the site closer to the street where we would be away from the stream buffer, as well as the zone 1, 2, as well as the stream itself. So no, we would not be filling anywhere near that. We're actually saving all of the existing trees within that zone, as well as working with Crystal to reforest that, which will be a requirement, and we will still have to meet all the engineering requirements through site plan process of adjacency to a stream. So we're also showing pervious pavers on our site, as well as underground stormwater connections. As you can see, there's a pipe running through that that connects to an overall system, as well as bioswales and other best management practices.
All right,
Well, as I say, on the project that was presented to a committee of the Board of Mayor and Aldermen, the two, I guess the two properties that abut this on Battle Avenue are two that have water and drainage problems right now. And so, I mean, I guess they're upstream of this. And so,
Our property is the beginning of the majority of Sharps Branch, so it gets further north, it becomes a larger stream, but on our site, it's not near as prevalent. The floodplain doesn't occur till another 700 feet or so upstream, so, and again, our project will actually, there will be, by law, an improvement on the stormwater calculations post-construction.
well, I want to tell you on this thing that the engineers handed out on the night, it shows something that's called Sharps Branch coming all the way back, much, much further south from you. It may be that it's only been studied up to where you are, but as
Yeah.
I say, it shows it going well past Battle Avenue and.
Yeah, we through this process, which is why we're 11 months in, we have surveyed in exactly where the top of bank is for this creek, because there were some discrepancies on that location, and working through with Crystal and finding out exactly where that was, exactly where the zone 1 and 2 buffers would start from that top of bank. So this is exactly to the 100th of a foot where that top of bank is.
All right, any other discussion? We're in the middle of a vote here. We're in the main motion.
I have one.
Yeah, Ms.
And looking at the preliminary elevations, is that proposed brick and hardy plank? Is it?
It'll be a mixture of, we still have to meet architectural standards as well, and I think that's something that's written into the planning report. The idea is to not have it as a long, continuous facade, so I couldn't tell you exactly the materials. Now, there are requirements within the city to have a certain percentage of brick and stone, so we will absolutely have to meet those requirements, but generally the idea is to break it up so it's not a continuous facade, and it's more of sort of a townhome feel, so that it feels more individual.
All right.
Question, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, please.
Will your side and rear elevations be similar to your front?
Yes, there is a side elevation that should be available in that. If you scroll down on that drawing right there, there's not a rear elevation because it will just face existing trees, but the proposal is to have similar materials and similar mindset.
I think maybe a suggestion would be on the rear to add some of the patios like you have on the front, where it's not so tall looking. If you can.
All right. Any other comments? All right, again, we're back to the main motion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
All right, Ms. Peterson, Ms. Allen, Ms. Gregory. Voted no, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, item number 20, Resolution 2013-29, a resolution approving a development plan for General's Retreat, PUD subdivision located along General's Retreat Drive by the city of Franklin. Staff?
Mr. Chairman, since this project is not going to BOMA, item 1 under procedural requirements on page 3 would not apply. Additionally, on procedural requirement 2, first sentence, first line, BOMA should be changed to FMPC. We recommend approval of this item with the conditions set forth on the staff report.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience other than the applicant want to speak to this item? Okay, please come forward and state your name and where you live.
My name is Jan Leader. I am a homeowner in Unit 149 of the General's Retreat and have been for almost 5 years now since it was initially offered. And I would like to say address three items tonight on that building site. The first is to make this group aware of the radon contamination that has been determined there by people who are currently dwelling in the existing residences. And the radon contamination measurements within those residences have been up in the teens, 15 and 16. The Environmental Protection Agency allows up to about 4. I say that to say that currently at the existing first phase of the General's Retreat, they've had to put in exterior PVC piping and drilling into, cutting into concrete to ventilate the ground and do what's necessary to reduce that contamination. I think the contractor going into the second phase should be aware of that for the quality of life and EPA concerns. The second thing would be the need in the existing units and also newly developed units for perimeter lighting. Having looked at the blueprints, I could see no evidence of perimeter lighting. Lighting is of paramount importance in that the only perimeter lighting that exists now are those that are on the porches or on the garage door entrances. Common areas such as the mailbox, and according to the blueprint, there'll be a proposed area for dumpsters for people to take their trash. There is no lighting, and when the residents return to their residence in the evening, especially in the winter months when it's dark, they go to check their mailbox. There is no lighting. It's completely dark. When they go out to walk their dog or exercise or whatever, we have ladies that are in total darkness. So my recommendation would be to consider perimeter lighting, and if I could go a step further to say something like on Columbia Avenue in keeping with that streetscape, or downtown Franklin in keeping with the Franklin look. Thirdly, I noticed on the blueprint there would be a reworking of the water retention facility, which the elevation on the property, the high end is on Columbia, the low end is on Adams Street, and all that drainage goes into the junction of the General's Retreat Road and Adams Street, and at that junction, when it rains, regardless of whether it's heavy or not, there's a backwash onto the road. That water does not drain freely into the depressed area for the water retention. And from a safety standpoint and a public health standpoint, as far as mosquitoes and things, I would recommend that they look at that when they do their redevelopment. Other than those three items, I, as a resident of 5 years, am totally delighted with the development, the blueprints, the reduction in the density for that area, and the construction materials being used on the exterior. And I thank them for the wonderful planning that they put into that piece of property.
Good. Thank you, sir. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, is there someone representing the applicant?
Good evening. My name is Jason Goddard with the Design Studio. I'm here this evening in place of our engineer, Jimmy Yates. He had a family emergency in the office this week and had to shuffle their schedule. So I'm here representing the developers this evening. We're delighted to work on the finalization of General's Retreat with this master plan. We've been working diligently with staff over the past few months, developing this plan that integrates itself in with the existing context of the streets and alleys and open space corridors that are on the plan. As Mr. Leader had mentioned, there will be a reduction in density on this second phase of the property. The portion we're looking at here is 1.3 acres of the overall 3.11 original concept plan back in the day. This 1.3 acres we're presenting to you this evening will have 20 units in lieu of the 24 that are currently approved. These 20 units will be converted from the 3-unit condo buildings that are currently constructed to individual single-family attached townhome units. Some notable conditions that we've received from staff that we're in agreement with. Staff is asking for a dedicated left turn lane pursuant to the entrance on Columbia. We are in agreement with working with staff at the site plan stage to make that happen. There is also a condition regarding site lighting, and we will be providing site lighting with the site plan as we move forward for the site plan of this portion of the property as well. All other comments and conditions we are happy with. Happy to answer any questions and respectfully request your approval.
All right, thank you. All right, Commissioner, is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Second. Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Ms. Pearson?
One of the things that's already been brought up about the drainage and detention, retention, you know, that's been a problem for a long time, and I noticed it said that that would have to be redug and things like that, but still, that's got to work
right
whenever it goes in this time. The other thing really that I had a question about on A 1.0 and A 1.1, I know these are just kind of representations here, but it looks like these are like built on a slab or something. They're not how many inches do we have to have it up off the ground? Raise them off the ground. But it did look as if on the pictures, on the elevations instead of I'll talk about the other page, A 5.01, they did look like that they were, the fronts here were mostly either the brick or stone, whatever, and there's some, what I call hardy plank too. I think that was mentioned already, but cementous board or whatever it's called now. However, whenever I looked on A 5.01, it looked as if the only stone or whatever was on the foundation. And it said there on the other cement board on most of the rest of it. And so I think that would be a concern, because I think that people would be expecting more of the mix there.
You are correct in that these are conceptual elevations. After we obtain approval on the development plan, we would fully engage the architect to develop the final architectural plans, and they would be developed in accordance with the design guidelines and the zoning ordinance.
And also in keeping kind of, or more or less with what's out there. But as I say, it looked like on this A 5.01, it did, now that one, it's more, the next one, yes, that one right there, which was really hard to read, by the way. It's very light. But if you look on there, it does say cement board, and the only place I saw stone was down on the...
Yeah, A 5.01, that's the existing, that's architecture from the existing plan. I was trying to find where that was in my package. That was the old architecture for the 3-unit buildings.
Oh, okay.
To provide the continuity.
Okay.
One of the guidance that we've given is that they do have to match.
Okay, good. That was the other thing I wanted to say. Thank you.
All right, any other comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, last item, ordinance 2013-05, an ordinance, or to be entitled ordinance to revise the parking requirements for attached dwelling, table 5.9, 5-9.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, over several months, city staff and others have been engaging with the design professionals, and we have also gone to 2 conceptual workshops to talk about parking and parking for, in particular, attached units. We almost in every attached unit case, we receive requests for modifications of standards, and we are trying to get our parking standards so that is not a normal situation. What we have come away with is a change in the zoning ordinance to 1.5 for 1-bedrooms, 2.5 for 2 bedrooms, and 3 for 3 bedrooms, capped at 3. So any time after you reach the 3-bedroom limit, it is still 3 parking spaces. Staff would request your approval of this item.
All right, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that really is passionate about parking in apartments? Please come forward. All right, I see none. Is there a motion?
Move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.
Didn't make this matter how much.